So I always love speaking with Brandi Mitchell, my wonderful sister-in-law. One of the things that's so great about her, beyond all the stuff that she's doing for women and women of all the ages with soccer, but she has always been kind of my teacher. She's over 10 years younger than I am, but she's always been my teacher around how to show up as a feminist, as someone who's supporting equality for all genders and non-genders. And so that's been awesome. I've learned so much from her over the years. I'm happy to share her with you and share her with our community.
Oh my gosh, I'm feeling so inspired. And I think everyone who listens to this will feel inspired by her story. We sort of, as for even for me as an athlete, right? You grow up, you're an athlete, and then you think, well, this is my life, right? Like I was into exercise physiology and physical education, all those things, nutrition. And I didn't look at me now. Like I'm not in any of those things. And it's beautiful to watch her journey and where she
Yeah.
started. She started as a soccer player as a kid, 10 years down the road, has nothing to do with it. And look at her now. Like
Yeah.
that's an inspiring story. And I think it's inspiring for people who kind of not sure what kind of
Yeah.
journey they're on. So I love that.
The world is a lot right now. Are you feeling it? We all need new tools to help us walk through the chaos with grace, ease, and compassion for each other and for ourselves. In this podcast, you'll hear from parents, educators, and other experts who can bring perspective to the monumental job of parenting. It's time to level up and be warriors for our kids and our communities. This is the Warrior Parent Podcast. I'm Marci Mitchell.
And I'm Debbie DiManno. As parents, we understand that it really does take a village to raise our kids. We hope that this podcast serves to create and support that community for you. Join us as we discuss and practice our core tools, which are proven mind-body techniques that can be used by anyone to improve your life on a daily basis.
All right, welcome back to the Warrior Parent Podcast. We are grateful you're joining us as always, and it's a special day for me because today we're speaking with Brandi Mitchell, and that is my sister-in-law and my feminist guru and icon who has taught me so much over the 30 years that we have been family. She is also, though, the founder of San Diego Soccer Women, and she is an advocate for play at every age, connecting and expanding the global community of age 30 and older recreational female soccer players of every ability level. At age 47, Brandi plays in several women's 11-a-side leagues and a friendly men's pickup group in San Diego, California as well. She organized local training and leagues as well as traveling the world, joining in both standard and walking soccer events. Going to be very interested to hear about walking soccer. And she completed her Bachelor of Arts degree and graduate coursework in International Policy Studies and French at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies in Monterey, California. Her professional work is focused on supporting the accounting, administrative, and communication operations of her small business and her nonprofit clients. And let me tell you, Brandi is a force. I just adore this woman. So welcome, Brandi, to the Warrior Parent Podcast.
Thank you. Marci, I so appreciate being on here. Debbie, it's great to finally be in here after watching so many of your podcast recordings. I feel like
Yay.
I know so much of what you
We
stand
have
for,
a
what you
fan.
talk about. Oh, no, absolutely. From the very beginning. I'd like to think I
thank
was the
you.
very first fan of the podcast. I have a funny
I think
feeling a
that's
few
true.
people beat
I
me
do
to
think
it.
that's true.
Thank
It's so
you.
fantastic.
Well,
Yes.
it feels so appropriate to have you here. We're celebrating women this month, and
Yes.
all of the things that you do. I'm feeling honored that you're able to be here. Marci and I were talking. We've been talking for the last year about having you here, and we finally got you. So anyway, give us a background. How did you start your nonprofit? How did you get involved in all things soccer?
Yeah. And it's funny because my path isn't as common as what you see for women in the industry of sport, the industry of soccer. Mainly because I started out grassroots and stayed grassroots. So that means, fortunately, I started playing young because of Title IX. So if you don't know Title IX, it's legislation back in 1972 that said women, girls and boys have to be able to have equal opportunity in school environments. And that really spread into non-school environments because sport had been included in school, and then sport spread, like I said, outside into the community. So I was at a point that I could, from the time I was born in 1976, I could join soccer programs at age 5. And that's not the case for women, even just, 5 years, 10 years older than I am. So
Yeah, so
for
that
me,
that was me, just so you know, and people have heard me talk about Title IX. In fact, we just talked about it last week, but
Mhm.
so I was born in 64.
okay.
So I was telling them I got a full scholarship when I was but a full scholarship, that had just passed. So for me, this is funny, but they paid for my food and room and board, but not my tuition or books.
Amazing.
And
And
that
which
was for
sport was that?
3 sports. I played volleyball, basketball, and softball for the University of Minnesota.
Amazing.
Yes. So I know my well-versed in Title IX, but I'm glad
Right.
there's somebody else here to talk about it. But yeah,
Absolutely.
we're
And you're
making
looking
good
at the
progress.
fight for what you experienced back then, that women
Yes.
are still dealing with that to this
Yeah.
day, of getting,
Yes.
a lower standard, whether it's equipment, venue, transportation, right, as professional level, but also, yeah, the money, right? And you hear it
Yes.
Mhm.
so much even in college environments that,
Yeah.
what they have been given is just so much less than what other programs are given, that
Yeah.
are for men and for boys. So
Yeah.
things change, but not fast enough, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, and
But
I ended up not, having played my whole life, and it was, my dad coaching, just recreational,
yeah.
moving into club and more competitive soccer. And I played a few other sports. I was always happy to just be active in general.
Yeah.
But I ended up getting hurt in my senior year of high school. I was planning to go to college and play, and just everything shifted really quickly. So that path
Mhm.
wasn't again what I had envisioned or what you usually see, because I ended up
Yeah.
stepping away from soccer from age 17 until age 27. And
Oh,
that's really when this kind of big concept came, that at 27, 28, a friend of mine had come to me and said, I know you used to play soccer. Why are you not playing in the women's leagues here? And I
right.
said, I had no idea there were women's leagues. And this looking at, I had 2 kids, so, young kids. And so I was just involved in local community, but it was, PTA and making sure
Yeah.
the kids had activities. There wasn't any concept at that time in my mind, besides maybe going to the gym, that I would actually be involved in a team sport again at that age, which is funny because, looking back again at the era, my mom actually did play women's soccer when I was a
Oh.
kid. So yeah, and I
Oh.
had 3 sisters. So we had 4 daughters sitting on the sidelines watching our mom play recreational soccer. And my dad would help coach, and so it's like the role model was there, but it was so I didn't even realize that wasn't something that had already been happening for generations, right? So
Mhm.
Yes.
I saw it all unfolding at the time without realizing how important it was. And my mom had never played a sport. She was on drill team, that's what you were allowed to do.
Yes.
She had learned the discipline and everything involved with being part of a team in that sense. But when it came to actually doing, especially something like soccer, where you are hitting into each other and kicking off each
Yeah.
other and getting hit by the ball, it was a brand new concept for her. So that, again, that model was really important, and I hadn't realized how much it would play a part in what I ended up doing.
Yeah. My kids grew up soccer, so their dad is a soccer player and played in college. And
Okay.
so I grew up on the sidelines of soccer. It's a one sport that I really never understood. But a similar thing happened. My daughter was an excellent athlete. Obviously, both parents are kind of athletes, so she could sort of play everything. And we were doing on the same route. Like she was going to go play college, had a car accident, and that was the end of all of it. She's in this place right now too, where she's trying to figure that out.
Yeah.
Like,
Mhm.
Yeah.
but my dream is that she'll be able to get back on that soccer field and play and later in her life and enjoy that, right?
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
continue with the love of soccer that I know she still
And
has.
that's kind of what you've been doing, branding, is giving that opportunity and encouragement to women, not just 27-year-olds,
Yeah.
but 30s and 40s and 50s and 60s and 70s. Is that the top of your?
No, we have women here in San Diego and other parts of the country playing in their 80s.
That
Like,
is
yeah, no, they're
amazing.
playing standard running soccer. And it's not a huge number of them. We're looking at maybe 5 or so here in San Diego County area,
Right.
but
Yeah.
they're playing with 47-year-olds and 50-year-olds and 60-year-olds because, and that's a lot of this lesson about, having this delay in women being allowed to be involved in sport is they didn't get started necessarily in soccer
Yeah.
until their 30s, 40s, 50s, or 60s. You know, we still have women joining to this day, starting for the first time in their 60s and 70s even. And
Wow.
thank goodness that's an opportunity, right? Because
Yeah.
otherwise, for a lifelong you know, opportunity of being able to play a sport, for that to have passed someone by entirely is really distressing to imagine. So yeah, we definitely have competitive players, and at national tournaments you'll see an age division of 70 plus. So it's not just like there are a few players mixed in teams, but entire teams, and they played more small. So instead of having 11 on each side, they might have 7 or 8 on each side, with a smaller field. But you know, they're running, they're kicking, they're heading, they're doing everything the same in that
Good
game.
Wow.
stuff.
So
Yeah, and soccer is intense. It's like the running is for real because,
yeah,
Yeah.
I played a little soccer as a kid. I was a ASO family.
yeah,
American Youth Soccer Organization was all over California. I don't know
right,
that it
Mhm.
was a lot of other places, but yeah, it's a lot of running
right,
and yeah, it's physical. How did you start your organization? How did you go from playing
yeah.
in the local organizations there in San Diego to starting yours and then just kind of this whole story of bringing in making the space for women of all age.
Right. And bringing it kind of international, you know, bringing
Yes,
together
yes, I
women from
love
around the
watching that
world. And
part.
yeah,
Yes.
and I think it's just, again, things that you don't, there's not a path that I at any
Yeah.
moment had said, like, oh,
Right.
I'm going to use soccer to connect my interest in, you know, French language and international
Yes.
policy. You know, none of that had ever occurred to me. It
Yeah.
was just this, you know, here at 27, 28, a friend saying to me, didn't you know this was available? And that was the trigger to think, well, if I didn't realize it, and it was something that I loved doing when I was young, there
Yeah.
must be a ton of other women who didn't realize we had this available here. So I started a website, san diego soccerwomen.com. And from there, it was just basically, you know, here's a way to find soccer in your area. And this
Yes.
was, you know, 15 years ago, or, you know, between 10 and 15 years of kind of making the website from league specific to overall San Diego County, and then expanding it into, you know, other areas of the United States, and then international, of where can you find an opportunity to play. And so, you know, it's kind of like, okay, there's a need. If I couldn't
Yeah.
figure it out, there
Yes.
must be other people who are looking for the same thing.
Yeah.
And then realizing, as you know, I got more involved. So I'm 47 now, I'm 20 years into this women's recreational scene, right? And understanding that the skill level difference is huge when it comes to looking at 40s through, you know, 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Yeah.
Women are looking for soccer practice, where that's not something that women had necessarily done. We used to just show up for games and just
Yeah.
play and go home, right?
Yeah.
Uh,
Right.
and so I think the concept of San Diego Soccer Women as an organization was, how do I make sure there's visibility of the women who are already playing? You know, there should be media attention. There should be some
Yeah.
overall picture that within, you know, you look at things like stock photography, you know, you're going to go do an Instagram post or some kind of photo. Like, how often do you see an image of women being athletic at ages 50, 60, 70, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
know that is shifting. There's an amazing photographer out in Bristol, UK, named Alex Rotas. And she has just, over the past, I believe, maybe 5 or 6 years, just gained huge attention for her photography, specifically of only older athletes. And
Good.
thank goodness that this, you know, that people are choosing to be in such a specific part of sports photography, or for me, you know, sport advocacy, because otherwise it would be completely overlooked, you know, especially the concept of older women, right? You know, like, you combine those two of age and gender. Uh,
Yes.
it's hard enough for women in professional soccer to get the, again, we talk about money, resources, you know,
Yes.
Yeah.
visibility. It's only the past couple of years that we're even able to see professional women's soccer on TV on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, bring it down again to grassroots or recreational level. There's a very common story that you hear from women who play, and that is, you know, we can be in full uniform. So we have our jerseys, we have our shorts, our shin guards, our socks, our cleats, right? Like, hair's pulled back, sweaty. You can go into, you know, maybe a supermarket real quick, or you're stopping to grab something. And the person in front of you will say, oh, are you at your kid's soccer practice or soccer? Nope, I wasn't at my kid's practice. Oh,
Is that
you're
my
a coach.
practice?
Right. Yeah. And they're like, oh, you're a
Yeah.
coach. Nope, not a coach. A
Yeah.
referee? Nope,
Yeah.
not a referee. I play soccer, right? It's like
Yeah.
mind blown that that's something that
Yes.
an older woman can be doing. And so I think so much of it, again, is kind of, you know, changing the perspective of boys and girls and men and women and non-binary folks and everybody. We want to see that there isn't just this one picture of what an athlete should look like, and
Yes.
being able to
Absolutely.
play for a lifespan that, that if you hear any news or watching anything about girls in sport, that there's this kind of age range where girls start to drop out. And thank
Yeah,
goodness, Debbie, and same for you, Marci, that you stuck through it to be involved in whatever sport or whatever physical activity worked for you.
Yeah.
But you have things like your period, right? Like
Yeah.
that
mhm,
becomes something that girls not getting enough information about how their bodies will change, what it's going to
right.
feel like in sport, how to deal with being on your period while you're, at a game, or
Yeah.
even uniforms, right? Tiny volleyball shorts,
Yeah.
swimsuits for outdoor, for beach volleyball, or for water polo, right? Just
For
so much skin
sure.
exposure, so much body shape exposure, that
Yeah.
Yeah,
so many girls step away
Yeah.
for those reasons. It's
no
not a safe
kidding.
space for them in general. And that, then if I pull that forward all the way into women in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, what's the safe space to play sports? Are we getting the field permits that we need? Youth men's, right? They've been doing it for so long, they often
Yeah.
have priority. If you try to come in as a women's league in almost any sport, there's a good chance you're not going to find a field space to be able to get a permit.
Yeah.
Getting referees, right? Like, where are the resources for older women to play, and what
Yes,
challenges with how our bodies are being seen, how we're being watched, the
Yeah.
concept of male gaze. All of these things get brought into play
absolutely.
when we think about women having the confidence and the comfort to get out there and play a sport.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is,
Wow.
and it's so fundamental. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the Olympics that we just finished up,
Yeah.
knowing first of all that it's in one of your favorite places, that was in France, your
Right?
big what do we call it, Francophile?
Yes, yes.
And then of course it seemed like there was some change, some new awareness. I would love to hear your thoughts on how that all unfolded, is particularly around women and equity
Right.
issues.
Well, of course, I couldn't not mention Ilona Maher, the rugby player
Love
for the
her.
US. Yes.
Love
I
her.
have to say, I've been following her for a few years, and
Ugh,
would kind of ask people like, have you heard of her? Do you know of her?
Yeah.
Following her on Instagram and Facebook. And,
yeah,
people would say, nope, no idea who she is. And I'm like,
yeah,
oh, it's just her concepts, or her presentation about body image and women's bodies in sport, and
Yes.
just fun and friendly and approachable in everything she
yes.
does, very
Yeah.
humble, but also
A
powerful and
badass.
strong
A
and
badass.
emotional. And yes,
Yeah. Yes.
exactly. And
Yeah.
it's funny because just recently we have our women's professional soccer team called San Diego Wave FC. So I was at one of their games recently, and I look down and I see a woman in this, on the field as part of the people who are invited, the guests, to be part of the kind of presentations for the game. And I see a woman and I'm like, that looks like Ilona Maher. And I'm pretty sure I saw that she was we have a former Olympic training center in Chula Vista in Southern San Diego. And I was pretty sure I'd seen something on her social media about being there. And I was just like in completely shock. Like, she's that close to me. I'm in the same stadium as Ilona Maher. And this was before the Olympics. So
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was like, how do I sneak down there and meet her? Right.
Oh, I hope you
So
did. Did you
I
figure
did
it out?
not. I was afraid I'd get in trouble. Right. So
Yeah, I
so
think
being in her presence there was just even significant enough. And then we,
Yeah,
again, move forward up into the Olympics and see how, as much as there's so many negative things about social media, this concept that has brought, for me, San Diego soccer women, and then someone like Ilona Maher into the spotlight, is really, and being seen by your average person, right? It's not a
yes.
matter of only within the industry that they know about it, but all of a sudden, everyday people know her
yeah.
name, and for what she's doing, bringing again resources,
Yeah.
investment from one of the women who's been investing in women's soccer,
Yeah.
now being invested in rugby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is, I
Well,
think, I go back and forth about the Olympics, thinking like, this is still entertainment, right? Sport is generally entertainment. And we're using these athletes as our entertainment, and they're pushing themselves so hard. And I know they love it and they want to be doing it. But at the same time, like, some of these athletes, the rest of their lives are affected in a negative way because of the
yeah.
wear and tear on their bodies. The
Yeah.
same way, being a young athlete and moving into adulthood, that we have all this wear and tear. And how do
Yeah.
we decide what the short-term benefit of sports and the long-term benefit versus all the risks involved with wearing our bodies out?
Yeah.
What does that look like? And even the social, emotional, psychological part of being in sport, huge benefits, especially for older women and sense of community. But then also, again, you have kind of the possible concussions, right?
Oh,
Possible
yeah.
having to step away from being active younger than you would have needed to. So
Yeah.
watching the Olympics, I always feel a little mixed in that
Yeah.
sense. But at the same time, the fact that women had such a strong presence, we know coverage of women's sports was way more than ever before.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I saw a lot of the
Well,
statistics about 50% of, finally reaching 50% of sport involvement, but for the Olympics, but it wasn't necessarily including coaches, staff, and other people
yeah.
involved.
I think,
Mm.
kudos to women's soccer. I mean, I think they're the ones who really push the envelope around the pay. And they could do it because they got themselves into a winning position over and over and over and over and over again, unlike the men's soccer team.
Yeah.
So they were in a position to be able to now call the shots. But kudos to them, because they could have just went along with it. They could have just said, hey, we won, and isn't that great? But they pushed and they pushed and they
Yeah.
fought and they won, and they got the pay they so deserved.
Right.
And I'm not to change the subject, but I'm all about basketball, and I don't know if you've been following
Yes.
Caitlin Clark
Oh
and all of
yeah.
that. And I come from a family of basketball players. My son's a baller, and I
Yes.
coached I coached girls basketball. And my goodness, like he is so excited. Like he's like, yeah, I didn't watch the men. I just watched the women's. Like it was so cool. But this is a first. This is a first. They used to laugh at me, about wanting to watch women's basketball. But I don't know if you saw any of the women's basketball at the Olympics, but like it's
Yes.
ridiculous. It's
Exactly.
ridiculous,
Yeah.
right?
Exactly. Exactly. The level of athleticism that we are finally recognizing in women. And it's
Yes.
right. If you put the resources and invest the expertise, right, it comes to things like having, the trainers be understanding women's bodies, right? Versus just giving them
Yes.
trainers who are used to training men,
Yes.
coaches who are used to understanding dynamics and it just seems so obvious, right? That we should have been doing this for a really long time.
Yeah.
But it also is up to women to advocate for themselves and for allies, right, to be support and make sure that happens. And I know Abby Wambach, a player from early on in kind of the more visible U.S. women's national team.
Yeah.
She had been fighting for years, and she had already retired by the time equal pay came into play. And
Yeah.
and so it reminds me that what you're doing to fight, what you're doing to bring about change, what you're doing to advocate, it
Yeah.
may not be within your span of
Yes.
that role or that position you have, but you're setting the stage for everyone else. And as long as you're representing in a way that gives a clear enough vision,
Yeah.
someone will be able to pick it up from there and bring it to the next place. So,
Yeah.
I think a lot about that. So something that's happening locally for me is, I say, like, I'm one person. I can't be at all the soccer fields every week. Like, what do I do? And quite honestly, going back to the original question, I didn't have a path of being a college soccer player, professional, or semi-pro player. I hadn't coached more than, helping my sisters with their soccer teams when we were younger, teenagers, right? And so to be in this place now where I feel like kind of a misfit, like I don't have all this amazing soccer experience. I'm not licensed. Why would I be leading in this type of environment? And maybe it worked exactly in the reverse, that I can relate to all the women who are just getting out there trying to kick a ball and figure things out, or getting back into the sport after having been, away raising kids or raising pets, or being caregivers to parents and
Yeah.
siblings, right? Like this role that in general women fill, that I feel like I can relate, and maybe they see me differently than if I was somebody who, had gone again through this kind of standard soccer industry experience.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what I'm doing locally is bringing about, again, this concept of women's soccer practice. So over the summer, every Saturday, we had an hour and a half of women's soccer practice. And then we'll talk about more walking soccer. I had that happen every
Yeah.
Saturday, in addition to our standard women's league programs that I was kind of mixing up by not having set teams and allowing all different women to join to have a little bit more even competition. So I ended up finding an amazing coach and her partner, who are absolutely phenomenal. And it went from me saying, oh, I'm only one person, I can't do more than I'm doing. And it was like, oh, wait, but I can find other women who are
Yes.
even more amazing, right? Even more passionate and enthusiastic, who do have these coaching skills and experience. And so she's been running the walking soccer and the soccer practice programs. And what an amazing feeling. And again, this lesson of
Yes.
there are other people who will be passionate about the same
Yeah.
concept and have a different skill set to take it over and take it a different direction, take it further than I ever would have.
Yeah.
So
We talked about that with women and that they're collaborators, right? Men give us crap because we're talking all the time, but we're collaborating. We're not just talking, right? Like
yes,
Yeah.
we're making some things happen, and that is exactly what you're doing. I love this concept of because I feel that way too. Sometimes Marcy and I are like, oh, we're the OGs. Trying to support the younger
right.
generations, right? And
Yeah.
we may not see some of the things we imagine in our lifetime here, but you're kind of giving me a little more sense of hope to just stick with it, to just
Yeah.
hang in there,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
It takes a village for sure. And
Yeah.
that idea of the ones who came before that allowed you to go a little farther. It's yeah, it's very inspiring.
Yeah, the women who started these leagues, the leagues were literally started the year I was born, right? 1976, a couple years after Title IX, women are like, oh no, we're going to own this space too. We're going to start our own nonprofit leagues. We're going to start tournaments. We're going to become referees and coaches. So having 40 years of, before I even really got heavily involved,
Yeah.
that was for me, what a gift, because in
Yeah.
other areas of the world, there was no precedent that women had a place in soccer. And even so to this day, it's more about younger women, right? They have their professional teams, they have their youth soccer. But then once you reach a certain age,
Yeah.
that's the age of motherhood, or that's the age of,
Yeah.
focusing on caregiving. That's the age of, even being focused on a career is fine in most places culturally, but that doesn't mean you get to also play sport. So I think that finding that bridge, right, is how do we find a place for women who are wearing so many different hats and also
Yeah.
want this sport for themselves.
Yeah.
And in the US, fortunately, not having it established as a men's sport, you mentioned AYSO, right? Starting soccer in this way that was just, here's a new sport that's being introduced. There had been some, surprisingly, in early in the 1900s, there had been some soccer, a little bit of involvement with women. And then it developed kind of in a different direction that it went for kids. So US women could take over that space much more easily than anywhere else in the world where men really own the sport.
Interesting. Yeah. And I guess some of that goes with the fact that it has been so much more popular in a lot of these other countries, and many of them are very patriarchal, male dominated societies. Not that they're all, they're all like that, right? But some are even more so, some of these. So that's interesting. Well, I don't want you to move on before you kind of explain what does walking soccer look like, because I really want to get that in my head.
Maybe
Because that
Marcy and
might
I
be
are.
for me. Who
I know
knows?
we could do some walking soccer here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love what walking soccer represents, and that is a more inclusive game.
Mhm.
And that means, and we kind of deal with the same issues we do with age difference, where you have different, speed, different reflex time, different strength, right? So walking soccer takes out the element of running. There's the most obvious part of it. So if you are someone to one extreme who was a former professional player, which usually in this case would be men at the age of 60 and older to have been former professionals, your knees are now down to having no cartilage, right? Like you have worn yourself out. You may have had, again, concussions, shoulder injuries, hip, right? Whatever it is,
Yeah.
but you still want to stay in the game. And that's so much how it started in other parts of the world, that former professional players, again, men, wanted to be able to get out there, but running isn't an option. And so by just shifting the rules, so usually, it's not going to be a full field, it'll be a smaller field, smaller goals, just the sense of you cannot run, you have to walk as fast as you can. And that means leaving one foot touching the ground at all times, right? As you're stepping and pushing off, you're not jumping and kind of getting that momentum. You're just keeping that toe, getting that next foot down, right? So nice if you watch speed, Olympic speed walking, if you watch that, they are not messing around. That is not a slow sport,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's just not having that motion of running.
Yeah.
So, and then from there, again, looking at it from a safety point of view, and the rules are different, not only country by country and association by association, but also just group by group, because each group or team or, again, like if it's a larger association, they get to choose what's safest for their members. And so no heading is pretty much a guarantee. The ball can't come up around the head even. Some organizations use shoulder height. They use the height of the goal. They use hip height, some as low as knees. So the ball isn't getting kicked up in the air. We're talking just a really tight, low ball game. And then add on to that, that you generally cannot tackle from behind. And when we say tackle, that means, you know, trying to grab the ball out from someone's feet with your own feet. So instead of being able to reach and just grab it from behind them, you have to be visible. So again, it takes away that element of, you know, somebody getting tripped, somebody getting stepped on, you know, at least there's full visibility as you're moving the ball around. And if you're really strong at walking soccer, you're walking quickly, you know, you have a lot of speed, you're doing really quick touches, nice, strong kicks. So that extreme is a highly skilled, just non-running, you know, air ball game. And then you look at the other extreme where you have people with, you know, bodies that aren't made for running around and playing soccer. And that can be a variety of situations as far as differently abled people. One organization, or sorry, one kind of grouping of people I think medically that has kind of brought this community together is Parkinson's. So, and I don't know the history of whether it's organizations, again, of caregivers for Parkinson's, organizations that are you know, providing healthcare, that this was something they had thought of, or if it was really from within the community of, again, probably men who play soccer who also have Parkinson's, who found that playing soccer was an amazing way to deal with a really challenging physical change, right? So you have people with differently abled bodies, and even, you know, when it comes to cognition, mental abilities, right? Able to just get out there and enjoy the game without the running, the hitting into each other. You know, it's really trying to keep people's bodies from getting knocked to the ground.
Wow.
So it's, and then everybody in between, right? Families, toddlers, you know, we just had a session the other day where we had the former director and current secretary of Walking Football Brisbane from Australia. So he was in town. He's come out before. He came to play walking soccer with us Wednesday night and brought a bunch of family members, all ages, all abilities, you know, tennis shoes, not needing shin guards, cleats, you know, just everybody, you know, within his family unit that had gotten together for a family gathering, and all out there, beautiful sunset, you know, and a bunch of family members watching and taking pictures. And where, you know, what other sport could you all be kind of in this small space together outside and laughing and getting exercise, right? So walking soccer is a huge addition to the formats that are available for older athletes and athletes with different abilities.
You just gave me an idea for our next family gathering, because the Mitchells, for many years we got together, we always played baseball, softball, and that was our thing. And more people started getting injured, mostly the brothers. So we're all connected by these three brothers, and they played when they were young, and then they would just kill themselves trying to outdo each other, and they would limp off. I mean, it became worse and worse, but maybe walking soccer is the one. And
absolutely,
how fun would that? Because I used to love those games. We had the kids there. We were all doing it.
And it only took one sprint, right? One of them would push off the bag for a sprint,
or one dive for the ball or something. And I'm like, wait, what are you doing? And then it was like,
oh my gosh. Brandi has done like some really big things, and I want to have a little bragging Brandi session right here, because we're getting a little bit short on time, but I want to hear a little bit about the commercial that you did. Let's hear about that. And then your trip internationally and what you might be doing there. So,
well, here's another one of those moments in 2018 where, like, my mind just shifted so extremely to possibilities. And that is that I had seen on social media, there was a picture of this beautiful soccer field surrounded by these craggy mountains and water. And, you know, just somewhere in the world, there was this amazing looking soccer field. And I had wanted to repost it for my San Diego Soccer Women social media. And so I went looking a little bit for the photographer, because I don't want to take anyone's art without permission, right? So I tagged a photographer, and ended up hearing on Facebook a couple days later, and he said, that's not my picture. It's like, you tagged me and it's not mine. And I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. But then he said, but I live here at this, in this area with this field, and I'm the field director, and you're welcome to come out here anytime you want to visit. And I was like, okay. So I put out a message to women in my network and said, who wants to go to this field? So it's a famous field up in Lofoten, Norway, up above the Arctic Circle. So up in northern Norway, this famous field, I hadn't been to Norway, didn't know what it was going to be like to get there. But yeah, it was like, I ended up with, there were 19 of us. A few people brought family members, partners, spouses, kids, and the age range. So I was the youngest at the time. I was 41, and we had all the way up to a 77-year-old who had been part of it. So we as a group basically took a few flights. And because I had made the effort to connect with an organization called Global Goals World Cup, which is run by women, it's for women, and it's basically using soccer to push forward the goals for 2030 through the United Nations for a more peaceful world, for a more sustainable world, right? The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. I'd connected with them, and they ended up connecting me in Norway with the prime minister's assistant and a big tournament out there. And we ended up being part of a gender equality conversation at a huge youth tournament in Norway as part of our trip. And then went up to Lofoten and played on the field with women. It's a village of like 500 people. So they went through surrounding areas and found enough women to field a team. And it was the most amazing experience. And yeah, like here's this moment where it goes from, working from home, raising my kids, playing a little soccer to like, oh, there's a whole world out there of opportunity. And not only, get myself out traveling and playing soccer, but I can include all of these women who wouldn't usually have this opportunity. In their 50s, 60s, and 70s, there aren't tournaments out there to just go and play. There aren't invitations to come visit this place in Norway until I ended up just taking a chance with it. So from there, I had gotten some coverage by FIFA. So the FIFA Women's World Cup, one of those governing bodies, I had, again, gotten connected somehow to someone within FIFA. So they posted on their Twitter account. We got some presence there. So I think that then kind of spun me in this direction of, again, using social media, even how grassroots and small and not connected to the industry as a whole, right? That I still was going to be able to make a difference and have some of these connections get bigger and stronger and the network form a little bit larger. So then fast forward, I took a group to France during the Women's World Cup in 2019. And then, I did another Norway trip 2 years ago, bringing a group of women, all 65 and older. So all older women, and traveling throughout, doing some things. It was a little harder to get a group of women to play against us that time, but we did it, right? And then just recently, because of the fact that my website and social media has so much visibility focused on older women, I was contacted by an agency working with Volkswagen and Nike and US Soccer. And they were going to be doing a promotional campaign. And I didn't actually know any details about it, but it was enough that they needed me to have 10 women who played soccer to get out to a park and do some film footage. And that's all I really understood. I didn't know what it was going to be used for. I figured for social media. So I ended up, inviting as many women. A bunch of them said no, which is such a bummer. But, I think not everybody wants to be in a camera as much as I do. So in the end, I got this group of 10 of us, again, age range, different abilities, different backgrounds. And we just had a blast. We went out to a park, made up our own drills, just played around with the ball. And lo and behold, a couple of months later, we find out that filming was then, kind of edited into not only our own footage. So they gave me video that I could use on my own social media of just our group, but then part of that footage became part of a commercial for VW that was shown not only during a Copa America big soccer tournament internationally, but then during the Olympics. So
we need to link that so people can watch it. So
it was tremendous. And so again, this concept that women have a place in sport, that older women have a place in sport, so much so that a large organization, or this grouping of VW and Nike and US Soccer, that they actually thought to themselves, how do we include people who aren't typically seen in this sport, not only as fans, but as players.
Hallelujah.
And my identity would come up because of all these searches that involve soccer and women, and timing worked out. I was able to pull it all together, and there we are. So, and I know it kept playing. I would hear from people like, just saw your commercial again. And
Ah,
it's the slightest, we only have a couple of seconds within it, but it's just enough that you can see these are not kids. These are not young women. These are not professionals, right? These are older women that are taking part.
And
wow.
representation matters. It
Yeah.
really does.
Oh my
Absolutely.
gosh. You have
Awesome.
inspired me. I'll tell you what. Like
Yay,
I
yay.
might have to get my daughter and go get some cleats and start
Right.
playing around again. Like,
Yes.
yeah.
And
Oh my
pay
gosh.
attention, because there are now cleats made for women, right? Like, as
Yes.
we get back into the sport, that we know now, feet are made differently. Men and women have different needs, different
Yeah.
gear, right? And so that's what I think is so neat. If you're gonna go into your own family, your own community, and say, hey, let's get out and do a sport, we can look at it so differently because resources have changed, and
Yes.
equipment is now different for us. And I do want to mention one more thing, that is, in general, I know at least in the United States, but definitely globally, I've seen it. We have a couple of habits as society, and one is to call women girls. And I'd like people to think about changing their wording. We talk about representation matters and words
Yes.
matter. So the
Yes.
history of calling a woman a girl, not only is it sexist of using a child form of a word, right, instead of an
Yeah.
adult, but also it's ageist. So it suggests that it's more important to be young, right? That it's a compliment to be called a girl
Yes.
versus a woman.
Yes.
So that maturity actually is a good thing, right? And it's okay to
Wow.
be called a woman. It's uncomfortable for people to say, oh, the woman over there, or the woman at the counter versus the girl. But
Yeah.
I think we just have to keep working on it and make that shift.
Wow.
And again, thinking of it from an age perspective, that even the way we talk to ourselves and the way we talk to each other, that being called women is a perfectly normal thing, the way we say men, right? Like,
Yeah.
Yes.
feels pretty
Yeah.
simple that there's that equivalence. So kind of
Wow.
I
put that in your mind.
always learn things from Brandi. I love
Yes.
that. I
There
love
we
that.
go.
I have learned a lot. Oh my gosh, this has been wonderful. I can't wait to
Yes.
tell all of my soccer friends to listen to this podcast. I think they're going to be inspired too. I'm
Yes.
so grateful, Brandi, for your time.
Thank you. And thank you for everything both of you are doing to expand all of our worlds and our minds and our bodies. And it's made such a difference, I know.
And now for your core mental health break. This is your opportunity to take a moment to support your mental wellness, your peace of mind, your own ease and grace. Take some time every day to support your mental health. You deserve it, and it matters.
So let's just take a moment to breathe. We'll take 3 deep intentional breaths to just bring ourselves to a place of center and calm. So breathing in through the nose, allow your chest and your belly to fill with air. Pause for a moment at the top of the breath, holding it before you release it. You can blow it out through your mouth, like you're blowing it out through a straw, or just release it through your nose if that's more comfortable. And now again, receiving that breath in, filling the chest, filling the belly, pausing at the top of the breath, and then release it all. Releasing it slowly and intentionally, calming your nervous system. One more time. Breathing in, pausing at the top, and releasing. Thank you for pausing for yourself today. Your mental health is important, and you deserve peace, calm, and ease in your life every day. So please, choose to receive it. It is always available right at your center, your heart, your core. Stay well, friends.
Thanks for listening to the Warrior Parent Podcast, which is a production of our nonprofit, Cour Experience, who also creates and distributes Cour tools. You can find us at courexperience.org. Make sure you join us next week for another informative conversation to help you and your family show up mindfully, purposefully, and joyfully with each other and in your community.
Our Cour Tools platform consists of a number of proven tools and techniques that are designed to reduce stress, anxiety, and overwhelm in spite of what's going on in your world. We want to thank Samuel Hale, LLC, for sponsoring this podcast. Technical and marketing support comes from Inspire Your Brand. Our podcast editor is Justin Beeden. Opinions expressed by guests do not necessarily reflect those of the hosts, the producers, or the financial supporters. I'm Debbie DiManno.
And I'm Marci Mitchell. Thanks for listening. If you resonate with the idea of creating a community to help support kids and families, won't you join us by following the podcast and sharing this episode? You can even write a review. It truly does take a village, and we appreciate you.